Alright, everything you need to know about 808s. Alright, so first thing, and make sure you do this, otherwise pretty much everything I'm about to say today is going to be worthless. First thing you need to do is make sure that your 808 is tuned to C. And so in order to do that, just look at your 808, right click, go to edit and pitch corrector, boom, it's tuned to C. Another option you can use is go to this website called TuneBat, and you just drag and drop your sample in. If it says C major, you're good to go. Now in the event it said, like for example, D, then all you need to do is go to this little wrench tool right here and then just click on D, and now it's tuned. Now the next thing you need to do, and this is typically the biggest reason people's 808s don't knock, is first you need to go in and let's say you're just using a sample, for example. You just want to go in, pull up an EQ and cut out about 200 Hertz. And the reason you want to do this is because that's where like the bulk of the 808 is going to be sitting, and you don't want anything competing with it. That's why you cut that out of your other more melodic instruments like pianos, synths, etc. And the next essential thing, make sure your melodies and your samples and stuff like that are not playing too loud. And just by it being a lot quieter than the 808s, the 808 is going to hit a lot harder. Alright, so now let's talk 808 placements. If you had chords, for example, you'd most likely want to put your 808s on the same notes as the bottom note within your chord, and if that didn't sound good, you just kind of want to work with other notes within that chord. Now let's say you use a sample, and one of the hardest parts of using a sample is actually figuring out where to put your 808s. If you're not sure the key of your sample, just use the website I showed you earlier. And for the sample I'm using right here, I know it's in the key of A flat or G sharp minor, so I'll just put my first note on G sharp. And all the drums I'm going to be using here today are from my new drum kit demo, so if you enjoy these 808 sounds, definitely check it out. And then if I listen here, I know it doesn't change till down here, so I know that I can put some other notes right here as well. Now next, I notice that there is a note change right here. And right there. And so what I'm going to do is just try out different chords that are in the scale of A flat minor. But one thing you can also do is if you go to your actual sample and you go to just the part you chopped up, you go to pitch corrector, you can see the different notes that are being used. And then you can get something like this. Now, in terms of where you actually place your chops, if you notice here, I kind of focus a lot of my changes towards the end of every 2 bars, but you can kind of reverse that if you want. And in general, I would always say go simpler rather than go super crazy. As someone that's started making my own music, you realize that less is more because it gives the artist a lot more space. And this honestly might be one of the reasons why your beats aren't selling enough. If they sound good, you might just be making them a little bit too complicated. So always do less, but later I'm going to show you some ways you can still kind of spice things up but keep it simple at the same time. Some other places you can kind of put your chops to add bounce is just move it over like right here. This always sounds good in my opinion. You can also add a little bit more chops towards the beginning. One thing I like to do is if we kind of just, take a step back and look at this as like a whole kind of 8-bar loop, is just add a little bit of variation in the last 2 bars. So the 7 and 8 right here. And if you look right here, the only thing I ended up changing, so I just added 1 cut right here. But if you listen to this, you'll see it kind of resolves the loop and it keeps it from getting boring. So now before we get into some of the cool stuff, we gotta talk about your kick. Kick and your 808s really kind of go hand in hand. And depending on what kind of 808 you're using, if you're using something that's a bit subbier like this 808 that I've been using throughout, which is just an 808 called Arms from the kit, adding a kick can be a great way to just make it hit a bit harder. So for example, I added this kick right here and I'm just doing it on all the same notes. And it sounds good. Now some 808s, you can see there's kind of a lot going on at the beginning, which is very similar to what a kick does, and it just makes the drum sound a bit more punchy. And so for something like this, you could use a kick, but you don't really have to. So this is without a kick. And then if we add the kick, not really that much of a difference. Now, if we want to make our kick kind of sit the best with the 808s, there's a few things you could do. First, if you just click on reverse polarity, which I actually did with this kick right here, that's going to help it sit and kind of cut through that 808 a little bit better. So if we turn it off, and then now if we turn it on, kind of mesh a little bit better. Now with your actual kick and your 808 pattern, even though I did it here where I'm having the kick hit on all the same spots as the 808, by kind of taking it away in certain spots, you can kind of create an interesting bounce, or just adding a kick in a place that the 808 is not playing. So if we look right here, let's just take this kick out. 808 gets a little bit weaker there, but then it comes back in when it's on the beat right here. Now let's just add it to a couple spots where 808 isn't playing, so maybe like right here, and you can kind of get an interesting bounce that way as well. And then another option, if your kick isn't really hitting hard, and to do this, you want to select your kick, route it to your 808, and just do sidechain to this track. Then open up Soothe 2. Feel free to just copy these exact settings right here and make sure sidechain is on. The cool thing about Soothe 2 is, rather than doing what a sidechain typically does, which is just duck the volume of the 808 when the kick plays, this just ducks the frequencies of the kick. So it's going to sound louder and just help the kick to hit a bit harder. All right, so now on to some of the cool stuff. Some of the things that you can do to make your 808s interesting and unique, but still leave room for the artist. So first, really simple thing you can do is just change octaves. On like these shorter notes, you can either leave them as they are, or in this case, I'm just gonna cut this up and just push one of these notes up an octave, and you get a pretty cool sound. And you can just do that throughout. Typically like doing it towards the end of like every 4 bars really. Now another thing you can do is add slides. So to do that, you'll just want to click on this thing right here. There's a few things to remember when you slide an 808. One, you typically want a bit of a longer 808, so something that looks a bit similar to this. And then in terms of actually placing your slides, the longer you extend it, like the longer the slide will be, and then the shorter the slide will be. You can either go up an octave, so like right here, I'm just going up F#5 to F#6, and then over here, I'm just going up 5. Other than that, you kind of just have to guess and check and see. Next thing you can do is switch between 2 808s. If you do that though, there's a few things you need to do. First thing you need to do is make sure that they're set to cut each other. Basically, you just need to click on each of your 808s, go right here, and then make sure they're set to the same number. So this is set to 9 right here. Now we need to go into our other 808s and also set it to 9. And then you have a couple options. You can kind of just switch throughout the entire pattern. Like one part of the song can have this 808 and the other part can have, you know, using this 808. Or you can actually go in, we can just pick a couple 808s that we want this other 808 on. So we cut out all these front ones right here. Just make sure you do it in a pattern, because you know it's all about rhythm. Something like that sounds cool. Now another thing you can do is click on the 808 now and just click reverse right here, and you can get a really cool sound. Alright, now last but definitely not least, let's talk some effects that you can use to enhance your 808s and really get them cutting through the mix. So the first thing that you can do with your 808s is just cut out between 20 and 30 hertz. This is going to get rid of some of that low end mud. Now we take it off. Then on the flip side, Mike Dean, I was looking at some of his mixing tips, and he says he doesn't do this because some speakers can like pick up on this. So kind of up to you on what you do. All right, so now some other EQ things you can do for your 808s is you can kind of just pull up where they're hitting hardest. So and pull up some highs as well. That can sometimes help make them stick out more. You just have to be aware that you're not clipping, so make sure you're checking your levels here. Now the next thing is just related to your kick, and for my kick I usually just keep it straight down the middle. Now the next thing you can do with your 808s that helps it hit a bit harder is you really want the lowest frequencies of your 808s in the center of the mix, but sometimes you want to keep the a bit higher frequencies, a bit more stereo, just so it kind of pops a bit more. And so what I like to do is I like to use Maximus in FL Studios, and all I do is click on this low setting right here, turn it on, and then turn this knob all the way over here, and that's going to kind of keep the lowest frequencies in the center of the mix. But overall, these are really minuscule kind of things that you can do to make your 808s hit a bit harder. One thing that you can do though that makes a big impact is using some sort of a saturator. I like using something like Saturn II, as it gives me a lot of control, but you can really kind of shape the tone more. But if you push it too hard like I did right there, it's gonna make it sound actually thinner and distorted. So it's really just a balance there. But yeah, if you thought this video was helpful, check out this video.